Hey, it's me, Sosmos. Wow, I should really get a better intro. One of the main criticisms that the Coffin of and Leyley gets is that it's not scary while being a horror game, and that's fucking stupid. You see, the horror tag is very misleading. Let me fix this. Let me get this straight. This isn't your Resident Evil type of horror where a big scary guy chases you and pierces your skull with a tentacle, no. This one really messes with your head, and not in a tentacle in your skull way. But don't compare this game to other horror games like this, Amori, Liza, whatever. They are very fucking different. Alright, let's get to the point now. What classifies as psychological horror? Regular horror tries to trigger your instincts, aka fear, which in turn causes a reaction, usually a scream or something else. Psychological horror tries to plant an image of fucked up nature in your head, which induces fear or makes you feel a certain way. Maybe you feel uncomfortable, or worse. The main difference between the two is that psychological horror can really go a whole different mile in the sense of creativity, as its main premise is not to just trigger a scream by making loud noises and flashes. Let's compare two different games, one of each genre, Silent Hill and My Eyes Deceive. Silent Hill has this big bad guy called Pyramid Head. He's a pretty scary goober. I mean, he has a big sword that's actually just half a pair of scissors. He never speaks, he always walks towards you, and of course, Bloody Pyramid has his head. Yada yada. What's the main reason of this guy being a thing? He's here to kill you. You don't wanna get killed. It's such a simple concept, but hey, if it works, it works. Now let's look at the other game. My Eyes Deceive is a game I won't really get into much except say that nothing outright scary happens in the game. Nothing. It's just as peaceful as ever while keeping a twisted atmosphere. It's nice, but when you really get into what actually happens in the game behind the scenes, it sits in your head for a while. Why? Simple. Because it's fucked up and immoral. As a person who played both games and experienced both, I barely remember anything scary about Pyramid Head. No scenes really stick out, and being real, I am not afraid of the guy anymore. But My Eyes Deceive, it's still disgusting to think about after all this time. You see, in my eyes, really disgusting stuff should stay out of horror games and go to psychological horror games instead. While a good horror game should ideally have a good bit of both, I find that to be unrealistic. But if you do have a horror game that's both psychological and straightforward and is also pretty good, tell me in the comments and I might review it later. Either way, I think you get the point now. Horror games get you to be scared for a short period, while psychological horror games make your mind think about fucked up shit for a while. Good luck forgetting about it. Now that this is over with, what makes the Coffin of Andy and Leyley a horror game? Overall, the soundtrack really portrays the overall atmosphere very well, and while I won't talk about it in this video specifically, I will make a dedicated video on it later. Another thing, the limited color palette of this game. The art style is pretty cute overall, but what really conveys the atmosphere are the colors this game chooses. They are all dark, and the only colorful parts of this game are used for either blood or to identify characters. Combine the soundtrack and the art style of everything, and it sets up a perfect, twisted atmosphere that carries through the whole game. No one in this game is normal. I'll touch on this topic further in a future video, but for now all you have to know: if you see a normal character in the game, they are either a wolf in sheep's clothing, on their way to be dead, or already are. Ashley is an obvious psychopath. Andrew seems like the normal out of the two siblings, but later on we understand that he's just as bad as Ashley. Nina and Julia are both normal girls who just wanted to be with Andrew. But Nina ended up being dead, and Julia got harassed by Ashley and will probably end up dead in chapter 3. Mr. and Mrs. Graves seem like they did nothing wrong at first, but then we realize that Mr. Graves is a pretty bad father and Mrs. Graves is one of the reasons why Ashley is like this. The cultists are far from being normal. The hitman is just doing his job and ends up dead. The lady in the apartment is kind of normal but ends up being dead. Yada yada yada, you get my fucking point. This constant elimination of hope for this game getting better in any way really takes a toll on your mind. This one's fucking obvious. Apart from the obvious murder, cannibalism and incest, a lot of abuse, a bunch of manipulation, and a sprinkle of lies, bake at 400 Celsius for 5 minutes and you get a game that's definitely not meant for sensitive people. This game doesn't use cheap jump scares to scare you, but instead what it does is tell you about how fucked up people can really be. And it makes you think. People like this are definitely out there, and furthermore, with enough trauma, you might become just like them. Apart from that, the wild shit that happens in the game is meant to make you uncomfortable. After all, if people are still butthurt about what happened in the game after all this time, doesn't this just mean that the game is a good example of psychological horror? Remember how earlier I said that psychological horror makes you think about fucked up shit for a long time? And guess what this game did? It made this fucked up shit stuck in everyone's mind. That means it has done its job exceptionally well. And if you cry about it on the internet, guess what? You are feeding into it. Well, the main points are now hopefully understood by you. Here are some funny things I wanted to talk about as well. The way this game sometimes completely shifts attention from fucked up to pretty damn funny and unserious is kind of insane. 1 second post-nut clarity hits Andrew like a bitch, and the other he's laughing his ass off because Ashley is a fucked up comedian. The further you get into the game, the worse the actions get. However, the less reaction the siblings have. This dynamic ratio of emotion for an immoral thing done seems inconsistent, but it's honestly quite interesting. Think about it. In the one chapter, Andrew was tweaking and crying over killing the cultist, and in chapter 2 he casually dismembers his own parents after sacrificing them to the devil. And even more fucked up, he's having fun getting rid of their bodies. Something else that I think adds a lot to the fear factor of the game is that the game isn't necessarily unrealistic. Apart from the obvious demon summoning, everything that happens in the game could happen in reality. As I said earlier, some people are really fucked up. Fucked up people do fucked up shit, and this game is a good example of that. I want to take just a bit more of your time to say thank you. I didn't think the video would blow up like that. It really was a Hail Mary to save my channel, but hey, I have a very small audience now, but I appreciate you guys. As usual, always remember, if a horror game makes you feel uncomfortable, the game is doing its job. But for now, this was Sosmas. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in hell.